So a buyer is interested in your book? Oh my goodness, congratulations. So the next question I get is, what can I, as an author, expect in the deal? Great question. We're going to go over that today. Hi, I'm Maggie Marr. I'm the founder of Maggie Marr Legal PC. I'm also a USA Today bestselling author of over 25 books. And then I'm also the author of the nonfiction title, Books to Film and TV, What Every Author Needs to Know. So the book is available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. And then I'm also doing a chapter by chapter breakdown on YouTube. So you can either follow along or you can just listen to me read the book and give you some additional insights and overviews with regards to each chapter. So today I'm going to go over chapter 6. And this one is your big book to film deal. Congratulations. A buyer is interested in your book. It's a huge compliment when people enjoy your work, and an additional thrill when a production company wants to possibly turn your book into a film, episodic, or limited series. Now what? Now the rubber hits the road. Once the book has been discovered by any one of the above methods, or one I've not yet seen, the next step for the producer or the producer's attorney or business affairs attorney, fancy words for in-house attorney, are to send an agreement to you. This agreement, traditionally, depending on the buyer, is usually one of 3 types. To make it even more confusing, sometimes these agreement names are used interchangeably, or there are even other names. For our purposes for this book, we are going to call them by the below names and take a look at some of the elements of each. Number 1, an option agreement. Number 2, a shopping agreement. And number 3, an attachment agreement. I will walk through each of these agreement types. There are also examples of each agreement type in the back of this book. But please keep in mind, these are examples of agreements. These examples of agreements don't reflect what should or should not be used in your deal, nor are these examples legal advice or meant to be templates upon which you can rely. Again, if you are presented with an agreement, any agreement, which involves conveying any of your subsidiary rights to your intellectual property, fancy words for selling, licensing, or optioning subsidiary rights to your books, I urge you to have an intellectual property attorney specializing in entertainment and preferably some knowledge about publishing review the agreement before you sign the agreement. There are too many horror stories of people signing away rights in perpetuity, or encumbering rights they didn't think they were encumbering, or attaching a person who claims to be a producer to the project for forever. Avoid these mistakes, and many more. Have a qualified entertainment attorney review any agreement about your rights before you sign. Okay, so I just want to say really quickly, that is the worst situation. When somebody sends me an agreement after they've signed it and they want to get out of it and they realize what they've signed away. All right, so find someone to review your agreements. Take the time, spend the money. I think that I know resources can be very challenging, but I think that it's one of the most valuable things that you can do with regards to your intellectual property is to understand what you're signing away, or what you're licensing, what you're selling, what you're conveying, and how you're encumbering those rights. Because later on down the road, that can become incredibly important. I'll give you a bad example. I'd never seen an agreement like this before, but a producer reached out to an author, and then after the author had gotten the deal memo, they reached out to me. It was a word of mouth referral, and asked me if I would look at this deal memo that had been conveyed by the producer's business affairs attorney directly to the author. I had never seen an agreement like this, because the agreement was an attachment agreement and it was for very low money, but it also explicitly stated that anything that was created based off the book, meaning a sizzle reel, a script, anything like that, according to this agreement, would become its own piece of intellectual property. And even though the option might expire for the book author, the producer would forever own the new material that had been based on the book, and they could do whatever they wanted with it without having to purchase the underlying intellectual property. I had never seen anything like that before. So basically what the producer was trying to do was they were going to utilize the book during the option period, and then whatever they created, they would then go and sell on their own because it would be considered its own piece of intellectual property, and the author would have no right, title, and interest to that, which is basically an abomination with regards to what you do, because, you know, one of the things is that if a screenplay is developed based on a book, it's a derivative, ancillary, subsidiary to the original book, right? So therefore, say nothing happens when the book is directly under option, but a studio later on finds the screenplay and is like, oh my goodness, we love this, we have to make it, then they have to also reach out to the original book author and get the book rights upon which the screenplay is based. So that, and then I've also seen other agreements where there are big rights grabs, meaning like I've spoken about this before, but some of the app agreements, originally those agreements were grabbing for film and TV and things that they really don't need, and they just want to have them because then they have the ability to convey those rights. I would argue that you need to push back against that. And then also in the film and TV space, the reservation of rights clauses are really, really important to authors because, yes, of course, you're going to maintain your publishing rights, or I say of course, but you need to have someone review it. But there are other subsidiary and ancillary rights that need to be looked at to make sure that they're not encumbering something that's really important to you as the creator of intellectual property. Okay. So the first agreement is an option agreement. With an option agreement, the producer is buying time. They're buying time to exclusively control your book and execute the option to buy the film and TV rights for the book that is under option. During an option period, the film and TV rights may not be sold to any other individual or entity without conforming to the requirements and limitations in the option agreement. I word it this way because occasionally, if a book is under option to one producer and there is another inquiry from a different producer while the book is under option, there is a way to marry two producers or entities together, occasionally. But that would be up to the producer who has the book under option for the term of the option agreement. Option agreements come in varying shapes and sizes, and again, the longer the document, the more complex the legalese, and the more I'd stress that you should have the agreement reviewed by a qualified attorney. I'm going to run through the major deal points in the option agreement. The term, number 2, the option price, number 3, the purchase price, number 4, the tail, number 5, frozen rights, development materials. Let's walk through a possible deal with Polly producer for author Angie Alvarez and break down some of the fundamentals of a possible deal. Term. The majority of option agreements are for 2 terms. Each term is usually for 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, or 24 months. All of this is negotiable. It's my opinion that, again, my opinion, and there are always different ones and exceptions, there are very few times that either term 1 or term 2 in an option agreement should be for more than 12 to 18 months. Less than 12 months? Sure, no problem. More time than 12 months? Not really. Again, there are always exceptions. Polly has decided that she wants to option Angie Alvarez's book. Angie is the author and Polly is the producer. I've spoken to my client Angie and I've also spoken to Polly. Polly sends me the following offer, OO, in the book for original offer for Angie's book by email. My first counter to the original offer is beside MM for Maggie Marr. Okay, option price. The option price is the payment for each term. During a negotiation, it looks like this. OO, term 1, 24 months, $500 applicable. My counter to that, MM, term 1, 6 months, $3,000, non-applicable. OO, term 2, 18 months, $500 applicable. MM, term 2, 12 months, $5,000, non-applicable. Term 2 conditioned upon written agreement by both parties. And then I also put reserving customary rights until signature. Let's unpack the above as well as discuss the deal. OO means original offer and MM is me, and it's my counter to the offer that came in. In my hypothetical deal, there are some important facts. Polly is a producer I've negotiated with before, and I know what Polly's budget is on this project. I know what she wants to spend. I also know that Polly does not have an overall deal with the studio or streamer, but Polly does have a close working relationship with Hulu. Hulu is looking to Polly to develop and produce more material, and Angie's book is in Polly's sweet spot where material is concerned. Polly has solid credits and can get a project made. I also know the value of my client's work in the marketplace. Absent Issa Rae or Shonda Rhimes calling or emailing to make an offer on this book, these bits of info are especially important, and yet another reason why you want someone who works in the entertainment space over and over again. The original offer from the producer is for 24 months, and the producer will pay my client $500 for those 24 months. Per the offer, the $500 will be applicable against the purchase price, which means the option fee will be subtracted from the purchase price that is negotiated now or later depending on the agreement, if and when the producer triggers, aka executes, the option. These are my thoughts. Number 1, the term is too long. I want 12 months or less for each term. Number 2, the option amount is too low. I've based this assessment on comps in the marketplace as well as what I know about the project and Polly. 3, the first term is 99.9% always applicable, so I realize this will be a fallback position, but most likely Polly is going to hold fast to the applicability to the purchase price regarding the option amount for the first term. Term 2, number 1, I'm going to meet the producer within 12 months with the caveat that is upon written agreement by both parties, and an email will suffice as a writing. I want to add this to the deal because this gives my client an out if he or she discovers that the producer isn't doing anything with the project or the author hates the direction the producer is taking the project in. When I respond to the producer's offer, I will always send my email with reserving customary rights until signature, which allows Polly to know that while I am authorized to negotiate on my client's behalf, everything I do or agree to is subject to my client's express approval, and that approval with regards to any deal point Polly and I negotiate could change up and until my client actually signs the option agreement. Okay? All right, so next is purchase price. I want $1 million for the books. Wait, what? Leo's voice rose 2 octaves. You're kidding, Maggie. You have to be kidding. These books are perfect for the market. No one has anything like this on their slate. You know this specific market is huge and completely underserved. There's a showrunner on board, it's a best-selling series, and they're really great books. While I can appreciate your passion for your client's work, Leo says, we're not even in the same ballpark with your counter. Leo's tone tells me that while I've talked him away from the edge, he's still irritated with my request. No problem. I get it. You discuss with Simone and get back to me. I know they want this to be their next show. There is little this studio wants more than to find Simone's, the showrunner's next show. Silence. A sigh. $1 million is too much, Leo finally says. The numbers just won't support it. Send me a counter. Your original offer seemed too low based on the package you've got. I'll get back to you, Leo says. But it won't be $1 million. Just know that. No way it's $1 million. I smile. Thank you, Leo. I appreciate it. No problem. I'll send you my counter by Friday. Know your market. When you hire an entertainment attorney or agent to negotiate on your behalf, you are also hiring them for their market knowledge. I realize that it's imperative that I know as many details about a buyer as possible. This helps me to know what is the best deal I can get for my client. Okay, so the above example, or the example I just read you, it's based a little bit in fact, and here's the thing is that with this hypothetical, the original offer came in at $50,000, and I went back and asked for $1 million. And while the client did not receive $1 million, they did get mid-six figures, and there's a big difference between $50,000 and mid-six figures. So you have to know your market. You have to know about the elements that are attached. You have to know about your buyer. You have to know about how much your buyer wants something, because that provides you leverage. So it's super important to try to suss out that information. And then the other thing is to know comps in the marketplace, right? Like, what are the comparable projects that have sold with a package? Because in this case, the hypothet has a showrunner attached. You know that the studio wants to do that showrunner's next project, and so they are highly motivated to make the deal because the showrunner wants this piece of material for their next project. All of these elements provide some leverage, because when you're dealing with a corporation, if you have no leverage, then you're not really going to get anywhere. But if you have some leverage, because a lot of people want it and they think that it should be the next project from the studio, or they think that they're going to make a lot of money on it, then you have leverage and you push for what your clients want and need. So again, this is another reason why I think it's really important that when you have someone representing your work, that you have someone representing your work that understands the industry and has deep roots in the industry, because then they're able to provide you with that insight. All right, so with an option purchase agreement, the purchase price is also negotiated at the time the deal is papered. The purchase price is the amount of money you'll receive if and when the option is executed, aka triggered. This payment traditionally takes place on or around the first day of principal photography. Keep in mind that at the time of negotiation of the option purchase agreement, the project is usually still miles away from production. Oftentimes the producer still needs a screenplay writer, a take, a director, an actor, and oftentimes the producer doesn't yet know for sure which studio or streamer or third-party financier will board the project to pay for production. All right, so tail. Some agreements have a version of the following language. Provided, however, that producers shall remain attached as set forth herein if within 6 months following the expiration of the option period, as the same may be extended and or reinstated, author enters into an agreement concerning the property or any project based thereon with any financier, studio, streamer, or production company to whom the property was submitted by a producer during the period. So what this does is this creates a tail for the producer. In the above clause, the tail is for 6 months. What this means is if the option expires and anyone to whom the producer submitted the material circles back to you or the author or to your rep regarding the book, if it is within that 6-month post-option window, the producer automatically gets to attach. Tails are semi-standard, but I prefer them to be for 30 days instead of 6 months. All right, frozen rights development materials. It's important that if a book falls out of option, that the underlying intellectual property, IP, aka the book, remains as unencumbered as possible. While under option, a producer may hire a screenplay writer and commission a screenplay and put together a pitch package, which could include a treatment, a sizzle reel, and or a pitch deck. All of these are new pieces of intellectual property that are based on the original book. What happens to these new pieces of intellectual property if the option expires? Of course, the producer may not exploit any of these works, screenplay, pitch, package, treatment, sizzle reel, or pitch deck, without either re-optioning the book or buying the film and TV rights for the book, but best case scenario, those materials would travel to the author with the book. The producer releasing the materials doesn't always happen, so in that case, oftentimes these new materials are frozen. Sometimes there is even a buyout clause for the newly created materials, which might allow you or another producer who is interested in the project to purchase the development materials from the producer who created it. P.S. Recently, this goes into the hypothetical that I was telling you earlier. Recently, I was presented with an option agreement that allowed for the optioning producer to have their own copyright on newly created materials during the term of the option based on the book. And that agreement stated that the producer could utilize all those materials of their own accord upon the expiration of the option agreement, which basically meant that the producer could proceed with the project after the option expired without paying the author for the subsidiary film and TV rights. No, nada, niet. Unless there is an extremely compelling reason for such language, I can see no way that this language is in your or your book's best interest. So just want to be really clear that when you're dealing with a film and TV option or purchase agreement, you need to have absolute clarity around what you are conveying and what the producer is getting and what happens to any materials that are created based on your book. All right. So the next type of agreement is a shopping agreement. A shopping agreement can go by other names, but the exchange is usually the same. The producer asking for a period of time to shop the book to a studio, streamer, or financier, either wide or to a limited number of distributors. The exchange in a shopping agreement is usually sweat equity by the producer plus little or no money for the length of the shopping period. These agreements are often short, both in duration and in actual length. However, that doesn't mean that they don't have an element that could attempt to inappropriately encumber your rights or attach said producer to the project for too long a period of time. Again, have an agent or attorney take a look at the deal and advise you as to what the agreement means and the viability of the producer and the deal. Attachment agreement. As of the writing of this book, I've been seeing more and more attachment agreements. I can't help but wonder if this has something to do with the need for content and the sometimes tenuous assessment of the market value and viability of projects before there are any players, screenplay writer, director, actor, in place. An attachment agreement will have the term, the exchange of money for the option, and it might have a paragraph regarding tails and development materials. It will also have a paragraph that is somewhat similar to the following: sale of rights, purchase price, credits, fees. Author hereby agrees to negotiate in good faith with any third-party financier for the purchase price, credits, and fees to the property and will retain 100% of the compensation therefrom as author's sole and separate property. The difference between the option purchase agreement is that instead of negotiating the amount of the purchase price immediately, you agree to wait on negotiating the purchase price for the film and TV rights for your books until such time, if ever, a third-party financier boards the project. A third-party financier is any studio, streamer, or independent person or entity who has the money to put the project into production. One of the reasons that I actually like, deal dependent of course, the attachment agreement for you is that it allows your project to become more valuable before the negotiation for the purchase price for film and TV rights takes place. Also, the third-party entity negotiating with your representative is a studio or streamer, aka someone with the money to make the project. Not only does this third party have the money to make the project, but they also have the desire to see the project made and spend their money to do so. You or your representative usually only hear from Studio Business Affairs when there is a real deal to be made to move the project forward. The third-party studio, streamer, or independent entity wants to do the deal on behalf of whichever producer brought them the project. In this case, all the agendas are aligned: the producer, the author, and the studio. And it's been my experience over the last 20 plus years that when all agendas are aligned, it's a great space from which to negotiate a deal. The deal is closed. Huzzah! The option agreement, shopping agreement, or attachment agreement is closed. Congratulations! You've now joined a select group of authors who can say that they have a project under option and in development in Hollywood. Time to start looking at real estate adjacent to Tanya, in for Chapter 3, in Lake Como. And soon you too will be yachting with Samuel Jackson and Scarlett Johansson. Alas, not so fast. You and your book still have a long, possibly difficult, path to the summit of Mount Hollywood. But closing a deal that throws your book into the Hollywood mix is great news to share with your readers, right? Maybe. Before shouting your good news across the internet, make certain to check your agreement for a non-disclosure or confidentiality paragraph that precludes you from sharing this exciting news. If there isn't either of these limiting paragraphs, then fantastic. Ping, TikTok, Snap, send a carrier pigeon. Tell all the people about your fantastic news. If there is a limiting paragraph, you may still be able to tell your readers that the book is under option for development. Getting permission may be as simple as your representative asking the producer if you can share this news with your readers. Most producers are excited for you to share the news of the book being placed under option with your readers. They may request that you not disclose the specifics of the deal. While some producers want to manage the release of this information in a way that can maximize the attachments they seek or the potential studio or streamer to which they want to sell the project, I advise you to be a good partner and make a quick inquiry to your producer about sharing the news with your readers. Most of the time, it's not a problem. All right, so this is Chapter 6. And as I mentioned, it's kind of a very fast and basic overview of the different types of agreements that you could be confronted with as an author. I can tell you that, look, this is a very short overview of what those agreements are. Option purchase agreements can be 25, 28, 30 pages. They'll have release language, reversion language. There's a lot more than just this. Generally, if it's just a shopping agreement, option agreement, or attachment agreement, those can be generally much shorter. But if it's an option or purchase agreement, those will be really long. It does something with your rights, okay? As an author, as a creator of intellectual property, you are encumbering the film and TV rights and possibly other rights with any of those agreements. So I would urge you to have someone look at that agreement, those agreements, when they're put under option attachment or option purchase, because as I've mentioned before, I've seen the downside of not having those agreements reviewed when an author will come to me and want out of a deal, or they are concerned with what they conveyed. I've heard stories of authors not receiving appropriate credits on screen for the work that is the underlying IP. And then I also gave you guys the example of this horrifying agreement that one of my clients, before she was a client, was presented with. And thankfully, she came to me or any entertainment attorney that could review that agreement and say, this is really a non-starter for you, because it will allow someone to take elements of your intellectual property and exploit them without ever paying you for this world that you created. So I think it's really important and a huge, makes a lot of business sense, especially as authors create huge backlists and you need to know where your rights are and what is going to happen to them while they are under option or part of an option purchase agreement, as well as what will happen if they fall out of those agreements, to make sure that your rights come back to you as free as possible. All right, so as always, I want to thank you for listening. And if you have questions, you can always reach out at hello@maggiemarlegal.com. Just so you know, we'll put links below to books to film and TV, what every author needs to know, for the ebook, the audiobook, and the paperback version. We're also starting a class about books to film and TV. I will be teaching that class along with a few producers and executives in the entertainment space. Please sign up. We will drop a link for the waiting list. Please sign up for the next cohort. We will shoot you an email as soon as we know when that will be. Again, if you got some value out of this, I would love it if you would like the video and subscribe to my channel. I can't thank you enough for being here and going through chapter 6 of Books to Film and TV, what every author needs to know. Okay, so have a great day. Thank you.